Welcome to the first workshop. I'm Rok, so I'm software engineer at Flox. I've been using Nix for, I think, a bit over a decade and a half. I've tried to convince many people how to use Nix. Failed many times, and actually, that's actually my value. I know how to fail by convincing others. And recently, and this is also the reason why I joined Flox, because I think if you cannot convince your coworkers, you're not going to be using Nix at work. Later on, another colleague of mine is also going to join me, Michael, but he needed to jump to the toilet. So I'll just start with the first. This is a talk about Flox, and this is Nix conference. A bit weird. I want to break this barrier. Flox is actually Nix, right? It's just a bit easier to get into, and we sort of have to do it, because if you want to be a company that sells Nix, you actually need to make people be able to use it. The problems we're trying to solve. So Flox. Whenever you come to a company and you want to convince your coworkers to use Nix, what happens? You have to sit next to them and try to convince them to use Nix. If you succeed, you go to the next person and you sit with them and you convince them, and maybe you're lucky they will start using them. If that's a company of, let's say, 1,000 engineers, no way you're getting there. And you have to kind of bring everybody on board. You're not going to be able to convince, or even like a group of people, you're not going to be able to convince everybody. So what needs to happen is that the learning curve needs to happen on their own at their own time, when they need it, right? That's number one. And I think by, now 2-3 years, we have users who don't know Nix at all, but use Flox. So I would say we confirm that you can use Nix, but not knowing anything about it if you kind of go the Flox way. So I want to kind of prepare you why this is so important. Now, if you're a Nix person like me, and I'm going to continue using Nix, where's the value of actually using Flox? I'll be honest, there isn't. Except, if you want to keep using Nix at work, you need to convince also others. So by giving them Flox, you will be able to keep using Nix at work. Make sense? So it's a bit around the bush, but it's like, if you want to keep using Nix, give Flox a try, or at least bring your Nix superpowers through Flox to your coworkers. And we'll see an example how we can do that. Okay, so most of the people, what they want, and when I say most engineers, they want reproducible environments. They want certain features from Nix. They want all the reproducible environments and all the goodness that comes from that. So whenever they set up an environment, they want to come tomorrow and it's the same. And they want all the packages. Nix packages is the biggest package collection out there. And yeah, that's literally it. They don't want, let's say on the day one, they don't want NixOS. They don't want all the NixOS modules. They don't want to know what derivation is. They might, but not on a day one. And usually when you start explaining Nix to your coworkers, you're quickly that person, that IT person that comes into the room and tries to teach everybody how to do IT. You don't want to be that person, right? So we'll go just straight into, this is a 3-hour workshop, so I'm going to go fast now, okay? When we designed Flox, and we did a lot of mistakes, but we learned from them, and this was the important part. Usability is at its core. I like to say that you already know how to use Flox without hearing about it. Why? Because all the subcommands that are there, you're probably familiar from other package managers. And I think at this point I can say we nail it. There are still lots of things we can improve on, but how to start a Git? Anybody knows how to start a Git repository? You do, scream it. How would you create a new Flox environment? There you go. How do you install a package? with Flox. There you go, and so on, right? So when I say you know how to use it, you know how to use it already without even reading the manual. And that's the UX portion, which is hard to describe. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and a lot of research, and a lot of things doing wrong, and coming back and rewrite them. But then on the end, it's just like, it's nicer, right? So there's a lot of value which is you don't perceive, and I try to emphasize it. Because otherwise, what happens? If a person does not know how to search for a package and then install it, they'll bug you. And you really want to be that person that 1,000 people, engineers in the company wants to always call when they need to install, let's say, a Python package? Not really, right? So when I try to introduce somebody to Nix, I give them a link to flox.dev, install it, get your environment up and ready without talking to me. Like, try it yourself back at home and see what happens. We'll be able to create a Flox environment. I'll explain what that means on their own without talking to you. That's the goal, self-serving. Okay, so I talked already about the Flox environment. This is the unit that we operate. If you know about the Nix's dev shell, development shells, it's the same thing. We just brought it, it's a dev shell on steroids. We'll also see what that's one thing. The second portion is the Flox Hub. This is our SaaS offering. We are a company, this is where we plan to make money. No, this is where we are making money. That changed. But this is also an overview in your organization. So one thing is working alone, one thing is working with 5 people, but when you have 1,000 people, different departments, it becomes messy. And if you have a flow from somebody who went through all of this decades ago and build it up as we did from, right? We kind of congested all of this into a Flox Hub. We can also look how that looks like. We're only going to touch portions of it, so we can talk later what else you can do. But day one, you come to work. With Flox, how does it look like? You go to hub flox.dev, you send them, they will, get their, GitHub account, GitLab account, and so on. They'll log into Flox, and they will start already the onboarding. And by onboarding, they will go through creating their default environment through the web, if they so choose to, right? That's one way of sort of onboarding is through the web. So they'll go log in, create a default environment, they'll pull all your custom packages that you require at the company, and they will then download and install Flox. There is a guide how to do it, and they will activate the default environment. The last step, and then they can start using it. That's day one. Usually, I used to work at Mozilla. This took 2 months, right? Just had to massage the system to allow me to build Firefox. It didn't take 2 months, but it took definitely more than a week, right? Of course, this is a talk, so I have to exaggerate. And how you actually activate the Flox environment, meaning that when you log in, to have this, we call this a default environment. You can think of it as your environment that's always active when you log in as a user. So let's say user environment, your home environment. This is where usually things like you would configure with Home Manager from the Nix. You can also do it with Flox this way. Now, is it better or not? I'm a Home Manager user. I will continue using Home Manager, but you know what? When I'm going to introduce somebody, I'm not going to say, like, go read this long list of options that you have. You can just create an environment, which is a combination of packages, environment variables, and a snippet of bash shell. That took me five seconds to explain to you. That's the magic, right? That's the real sauce. Day two, what happens? So now we're going to go through like a real example. You're handed out a Go project. On the left is my notes, so I don't forget. But this is like it's just an example application. We can see there is main.go. It does stuff. doesn't really matter. But the first thing you will say like, okay, I want to build this application. So let's do go, run main, and I need to sort of run it and pass the quotes. I don't have go. Okay, how do you do this? That's already the first, that's our first example. Is like, okay, we'll create a Flox environment. Flox init bare, just to have a really minimalistic Flox environment. What it did, you will see just like Git, it created this Flox folder. It wasn't there before, just so you know. And then it will Flox install go. I don't even have to look up. I've seen people not even looking up what the commands line are. They just do it and know it, how it works. There is almost no need to look up the documentation. So now I should be able to run go. No, because I have to run Flox activate. So Flox activate is actually the only command that you have to learn, that it's not, maybe it's something similar to in Python when you do the activation for virtual environment, but that's where it goes. And now we can run our fancy thing. Okay, it built the server clearly. And yeah, how do I do now the quotes? So, can I do another? Now the layout got. But yeah, I can get the quotes. So these are all the quotes. I think it's like this, and I have the quotes. It's a quotes app, and we have 7 or something like. So what's the next thing? This also connects to, it has a database. So a lot of times when you develop, you have some services that you want to run in the backend, so that you can kind of, usually these are the databases. So let's also do this. So first we're going to install Redis. And I'm going to scroll here, because I'm going to copy all of this. Okay. So either I do this, Flox env manifest. This is where you configure your environment, or I can do also Flox edit. So far, I have 2 packages installed inside. And you will see this is a Go package and a Redis package that I installed. Now we're getting to the fun bits. Okay, indentation. It's all I do all days. There we go. What do we do? There is a service. Why am I pointing? There is a service. I kind of define the Redis port. This is environment variable that's going to be there inside. And I create also a profile. Think of it as where you source things. This is where you would source, let's say, Python virtual environment and things like this. Or create an alias for us, which is a command that would load our quotes into the Redis database. Okay, so now I save this. The only thing you have to remember, once you change the manifest, you have to go out and then Flox activate. Now, if I go Flox service, so first, what was Redis port, it's there. Flox services, there is a, start them. Failed to, am I already running? I was preparing for this talk, and I apparently didn't. There we go. And now the Redis is not. This is the Redis. logs. God damn it. Redis server. Let's not debug this. Stopped. God damn it. Believe me, it works. I just broke it somehow because I was preparing for this talk. I want to go through all the things because it will take me probably a few minutes, but load. So that's the alias, quotes. Yeah, clearly this is not working. We'll go to this mode. Yeah, so I would start the services, I would load the quotes, and then the app is going to be running, and you have this service in the background. Okay. The next thing is also what we allow in that TOML file. So first thing, here is the magic. It took me a few minutes to explain you this. If I would kind of have to explain you this in Nix, it would take me a lot longer, right? Again, that's the whole point. Reusing environments, why would I have to reconfigure, define the environment every time? If I can just create a Redis environment on the left here, and then I publish it, push it to the Flox hub, and then I can reuse it from there. So you can create reusable chunks. So in our case, there is a Go environment that we can maintain with Go tooling, and there is a Redis environment. You can just include both of those environments. So then you will not even have to install the package, because that environment installs the package. And then you sort of just merge two of the environments together, right? So imagine two TOML files get merged, that's it. That's what's happening. And then again, you start the service, Redis works and everything. That's one way how to work. And then when you're preparing to actually bring this to production, question to those who know Nix, how long would it take you to teach somebody how to write a Nix package? Come on, shout out. Yeah? And they will be able to go home and do it on their own without talking to you. The answer was 5 minutes. I would say it's from a month, if the person is really wants to learn, to a year. If they are like, okay, do I really have to know this? It takes time. It's not because the problem is, the problem is hard, right? And if you want to have this in a pure package and package properly as Nix, it just takes time. We kind of created a step in between these pure packages and just running npm install. We call this a manifest build. So what we do is we let you create a command, and then inside that command you do whatever commands you need, so npm install, go build, and so on. And then you copy everything that actually comes from Nix to this out variable. That becomes, everything inside there becomes a package. Then you build it with Flox build command, and you can run it, verify it, and then you publish it. And then publishing means you will publish it to Flox Hub into, I think we call a catalog, so a catalog of software. And this can be either public, private, only to your team, to the whole company, there are all the permission settings that you can choose from. We even have how to do the combination with Flox AI. These are all bonus things, which probably we don't have time to. But just saying, there is a really good integration with Cloud Code, because, well, who writes code, right? Today. We're going to talk this at the end. So we went through kind of creating your default environment. This is useful to kind of install the tools that you need day to day, Git and so on, and your editors. We created a development environment, we build it, we publish that a package, and then when you can install it in another environment called production, and then you deploy this to your servers. And everything is nicely tracked, reproducible, and didn't need 4 hours to explain you how to do all of this. The magic behind it, I mentioned a lot of things about the catalog, and my colleague is going to explain you everything about it, or try to.
Yeah, definitely.
Just
check. All right. So as Rok mentioned, we have a thing called the Flox catalog, and this is basically the server-side component of how you're getting all the packages from Nix packages or from your own custom content that you've put in there. And that doesn't sound that complex or that complicated until you start thinking about having historical versions of software available. Generally if you're running Nix, you're kind of running at the tip of the branch that you run, whether it's a NixOS branch or a different branch or whatever. And for us, the issue is that in enterprise and business settings, you want to have versions of software that may span something that was out 3 years ago, or it may be something that came out last week, or maybe something that just came out. And satisfying all those requirements is kind of difficult with a rolling release. So just to go over a little bit of this, and this is where some of the Flox stuff differs from Nix raw, I guess, and so this is some of the stuff that I think is really interesting. The catalog is just a metadata thing. It's basically a database. We scrape a bunch of packages from Nix packages. We do some nar info lookups and stuff like that and put it all in a database so that we have it very rapidly available to people. The goal is that you never have to perform an eval if you're doing a package set change on what's going on for Nix. So you're not performing like a client-side eval, and everything should be a cache hit because we already know, we've done all the work ahead of time to calculate that we know this is in cache or it's not. Obviously, things are unfree. You still have the same issues that you would always have with unfree packages because they won't be in the cache. So a package is like the thing you know, package path, pretty common. Build, specific instantiation of the software. So basically, what build was it at what version, at what commit kind of thing. And then Nix and Nix packages I'm not going to explain to you. So resolution, basically, we have 194,000 different packages inside of our catalog, and we have 27 million builds that we've inventoried and that you can select from. So that sounds really cool, but then you think about the way that Nix packages works, and you're like, okay, I want to go get a version of PHP that was out 2 years ago, but I also want to go get this thing that PHP links against. Well, you need to get those from a contemporary set of packages, otherwise you're going to have ABI and API breakage. Because if I go grab, let's say, PHP generically, I don't know why I picked PHP, what a terrible example. Anyway, let's just say I grab PHP and from 2 years ago, and I'm grabbing a PHP C extension. If I go get the modern one, it's probably not going to work. And so those need to be grouped together in some way. Or my entire environment could be anchored at this date and time that was 2 years ago. So, and I guess maybe I should go through the actual examples since we did it with Python instead of PHP, which is maybe better. I don't know. So with Python, you can go install things. If things are flagged as insecure, we will tell you that. By default, we want to install things that are flagged as insecure, which I think is generally a good idea. So, and then Nix packages, like I said, our catalog is built on a fork of Nix packages, which is basically reset to the way Nix packages upstream every day. So the difference is Nix packages gets somewhere between a few dozen and several hundred commits in a day. And we only snapshot it once a day for the catalog because it just moves so fast.
Just to correct you, it's not a fork, it's a fork, because it's a spoon and a fork. It's like a bit more gentle.
It was Spork, is what I've been informed. We're gonna talk about that later. And then, so basically, yeah, we commit, we do a sample, we build out, we do all the database fun, and then that allows us to do things like search and show. So one of our goals with Flox was to orient the user around the traditional package managers they're used to, like homebrew or apt or yum, where I do a search, I do install, and then I can use the thing. And with Nix, it kind of starts with, well, before you write any code, define your build. And it's like, my build of what? And coming at this from like a non-Nix native perspective, that was very weird. And so we kind of flipped it back to be like, well, let's go meet the users where they're likely to be coming from. And that's, I do search, I do install, I set up my dependencies, and then I start working on that package build or that output. So we have search, and we have the way that search happens is we search by name, but then we also look up what architecture you're on and all sorts of other stuff, and it tries to give you the most concise and accurate thing that it can give you, as any search engine would. And then we have show, which will show you all the list of things available. And like if you do like a Flox show Go, you're going to get, 50 different revs of Go that have existed in Nix packages over the last couple of years. And that's the goal there. And so as you search and install things, you can do that. And then also you can have namespace things that are in a custom catalog. Like we used to have do we still have a catalog? Yeah, we still have a catalog called Flox CUDA that has like CUDA acceleration stuff. So you can just grab it from there. But basically our goal is that you can do Flox install and you can do Flox upgrade and everything works. But the complexity is all on the backside calculating where you're at in terms of point of time. And so we give you some constraints, and like we'll send over things like what package are you looking for, but then also what versions are in the environment already. Do you have a license policy that like maybe you don't ever want to install something that's AGPL or whatever. And then also do you have a known anchor point for the existing environment? So all of that comes in and it helps us resolve what package set we would give you. And then walks through all of this stuff, but basically it tries to find a page in a catalog, which is how we talk about it, because it's a catalog, it has pages you flip through. We just went with the metaphor. So what page are you on in the catalog, and do you have to move pages to accomplish the goal? And if you do, we'll give you candidate pages, and then like the resolution algorithm goes through all of that and goes and selects the one that is gonna have the stuff you want. So in this case, looking for Python 3.13.6, and we install that. But you can see how it kind of goes through and it says, okay, I have that on a few different pages, but most of these pages have older, or have several different Pythons available because of the way that Nix packages namespaces Python. And then you can see that we want Go, and so you go look at Go, and now you're like, well, how do those two things work together? You just install it, and it finds the commit that will have the common versions of the version of Python you've requested, the version of Vim, and the version of other things that you're asking about. If we can't find one, those constraints cannot be satisfied, because say I want the version of Claude code that came out yesterday, but I want the version of PHP that was out 2.5 years ago, it's going to be like that. I can't satisfy that constraint if you're going to give me a hard version number on both. So how does Flox solve that? Well, you split them. And you say, actually, I will have 2 anchor points in this environment. I will have one section that is much older, and I will have one that is contemporary or modern. And now, sometimes you can get into API breakage in there, but you're basically saying, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to do this. And it might be, well, I only need to run the binary out of one of these, and the other one, I actually care about library connections and header files and whatever. And so that's why that works that way. So you can split things into separate package groups, and that allows you to kind of time travel across the same environment. Yeah, and then if there's absolutely no way to solve the problem at all, you will get a constraints too tight error, and we keep working on improving that to try and help you through that. And it's definitely improving, but it still can be a difficult that you can run into. And if you ever do, you can just jump on our Slack and we'll help you. So I think we're good on that. So basically our goal is that you can have the version of the package you want, and it can work with the other packages that are in the Flox environment, and that's the goal. And so you can either handle that by anchoring where you're at, always running at the latest. That's usually the easiest way to solve all the problems. Just do everything at latest and don't pin versions, and you'll be in a good shape. Or otherwise, you can have package groups where I have, part of my environment is anchored from a while back, and part of it is more modern, or however that needs to work. So those are the choices. Thank you. You want to do it in containerization?
You want to do? Yeah, go.
All right. Containerize. So a Flox environment, as Rok said earlier, it's kind of the unit of work without Flox. And so that's your packages, your environment variables, your service definitions, build definitions, all that. But you can also just containerize this stuff. And so if you run Flox containerize, it basically makes the bundle from Nix. It does a Nix bundle export, roughly. Yep. It's not exactly that, but it's really, really close. And then we get to containers. And then from there, you can run containers. Yeah. So, but we also have another way so that container will have all the packages and everything that's in the environment, which is great because it's basically a distro-less container. So if you're into that, super great. The other thing you can do now is kind of work with our Kubernetes containerd plugin. Sorry, the word was escaping me. Containerd plugin, where you can run a Flox environment natively within Kubernetes. And so, like, why do I have to go through this container export step? Nix already has all the definitions of everything I need. And the other thing is because basically, if you have a Docker file and you're building out your container, and say it's got 50 lines, if you change something at line 25, every layer past that is now a new SHA, so you're shipping down a whole giant image, whereas with the way that we've done the Flox environment, if you change one package, the thing that we're going to ship out over the network is the delta of the one package and not the rest of everything else you're using. So people that are doing particularly like edge networking or IoT devices or things like that, love that right away. People who pay for transfer in their clouds also like that quite a lot. And network transfer is one of those costs that you don't really think about until you get the bill and you're like, how is my third largest cost on AWS network transfer? Or second largest or largest, depending on what you're doing. So what we do is we take the Flox environment and containerd basically boots this container called var empty, or empty, I guess it's Flox empty, right? Yeah, because containerd has to have a container, even if it doesn't do anything. And so we give it this 49-byte container. We basically tar up dev null, put it in a container, boom, you're done. And then from there, we bind mount in all your Nix store paths and activate that way. And so when you bind mount in all these Nix store paths, what's really cool about it is you can have a very warm cache already sitting there of everything if you know what you're doing or if you have activated anything before. And it just makes this Kubernetes experience feel really good. And so everything that you've already done with pods in Kubernetes, it feels identical. The only thing you need is a minor annotation on one line of your YAML, your pod definition, and it's fine. But you can also have native containers running side by side with the pod. So like you can have a Flox environment in part of the pod, you can have your native containers, like you have a sidecar pattern that does all your monitoring or whatever. Like you definitely don't need to jump all in and say, I'm gonna do everything with Flox right now. That's not the point. But this allows just to run kind of Nix stuff natively. And there's also an open source, a person that made like the Nix CSI driver. That's really cool, if you haven't played with that. So just in case you're playing with Kubernetes stuff. So our imageless Kubernetes has the containerd shim. Kelsey was the guy who helped design it. Like that was actually how we kind of got hooked up with Kelsey the first time, was we were talking about Nix stuff, and he was like, I think you could do this in Kubernetes. So he gave us a couple different API extension points to look at. He actually approved a lot of the designs and even drew it out with our CTO quite a few times. We do have an example that you can run kind, which is the Kubernetes and Docker. We have a client for that on our GitHub where you can just go through the examples. And we also have installation examples that use Terraform, like we provide the Terraform code and everything like that if you want to have it work on EKS or other things. So we're trying. I'm not sure the Terraform is perfect. Do people like working with other people's Terraform code generally? Sometimes, yeah, not always. So if it's not your favorite, I apologize, but we're not there for style points. We're just trying to get you help. So if you want to play with the imageless Kubernetes stuff, those are the links. Or if you want to talk to us at the booth, we can demo it or whatever. But the key here is this annotation here, this flox.dev environment, and that's basically how it knows what to do with everything. I'm going to let you take this one.
Okay. One thing is, so with Flox environment, as you know, nowadays you also need to have the SBOMs, if nothing else, to have a checkbox at the end of the day that you can produce the SBOMs. And I think this is where this is the sad, actually, truth. Those people who know how to produce SBOMs, they do, and they don't know what to do with them afterwards. And I think what we try to actually achieve with Flox Hub is actually make actionable SBOMs. So when you have an SBOM, what do you do with it? If it's out of date, how do you mitigate? I think that's where the intelligence or in Flox comes, like having actionable SBOMs. So not only telling you, yes, you have an SBOM, you know what's being packaged. No, what do you do after that, right? So right now we have some visualizers and stuff, but yeah. So now this was not written for a conference that has a lot of Nix people, so this Nix test was all bonus. That's not bonus. I said before, as a Nix person, I want to share my Nix knowledge and my Nix packages with others. How do I do that? One way, so how do we integrate with the Nix system? Inside the manifest TOML file, I can point to exactly a package via the flake reference string. So there is a package called tone, but instead of installing it via the catalog, as we did before, I can create a flake reference. So if you're a Nix person, there was like, okay, I have flakes. Now I know how to give these flakes to my coworkers, right? Second thing, you might already have a Flox dev shell, which you are handcrafted and you keep up to date all the time. You can just add it on this on activation hook. So upon doing Flox activate, it will run this snippet of bash, and you can activate the dev shell if you so choose to, right? So I'm just I'm sort of listing you all the kind of the hooks that you can plug in depending on your needs. And the last one, I think that's the best one, is you can also do builds. So you remember before where you only had to specify like few lines of bash to create a package? Now that's cool, but I was running npm, I think Go was downloading packages there. So it's really not pure. It's okay to, on a day one to get started, but at one point, SecOps teams comes and says like, okay, this needs to be reproducible. Then, only then, you go and you package it with Nix. So what Flox kind of allows you is on day one, let's get some prototype, POC, MVP, whatever, ready, play with it, make it useful, make actually people want to buy it, and once you ship it to production, let's make it reproducible with Nix. Then you can write a package, just like you do in Nix packages. In this case, do I have a full example? No. In this example, I'm copying the version of hello. So this Nix edit will copy the Nix expression of a hello derivation, hello package, and it will copy it to specific location in Flox folder, .flox folder. And if you do Flox build my hello, it will just build that package. So you can start building packages without knowing anything about the flakes, what the flakes are. You don't need to know anything. You can just focus on little snippets of a Nix ecosystem, and over the time, you will be able to actually learn it. Not everything on a day one, but slowly, gradually, when you need it. And I think that's the magic. So will I be using Nix in the future? Myself, for my needs, when I'm working alone with myself? Probably not. I'm a Nix person. I'm too old to change. But when I need my coworkers, when I come to work, hell yes. Because I need to share the code. And I think there are good reasons, and I think we need to remind ourselves that there are good reasons that people don't have time to learn Nix. And if you cannot convert everybody to use a reproducible environment, well, you sort of cannot use it yourself as well. And I think that's a true kind of magic. And I think we went really fast, probably because the demos didn't work. So we have some extra 5 times for questions if you have any. Yeah, sure.
The one question I had was, there are industries that Nix, I don't think have touched yet, and one of them, and correct me if I'm wrong, data engineering as a whole. So as a data engineer, I'm trying to figure out ways to bring Nix into that environment. Do you guys have any ideas or plans to venture off into that with Flox?
Yeah, we're working on it. So the question was more, what about Nix with data engineering? I mean, we've been doing a lot with basically trying to figure out our Python direction for a lot of things, because there's obviously a million ways to solve Pythonic problems with Nix, and we're trying to figure out the path through that we are going to have as a recommended practice. Right now, I think we're leaning toward UV as kind of the foundational layer, but there's there are a few gotchas in a few spots, and then there's also kind of the how do you actually get the entire Python ecosystem the way you want it, and things like that. So, but we've been spending a lot of time building things like PyTorch and TensorFlow and things like that that are optimized for, well, one, for being in Nix, but also for like the exact architecture you're on. Because like when you download those Python wheels, they're 800 megabytes or whatever, and we're trying to get them down to like 50 or whatever they actually have to be to run on the thing that you're doing. And so we've been spending a lot of time with that. We also work together with the NixOS Foundation to get CUDA more available inside of Nix and Nix packages. We're continuing to expand that. Like I know it's not totally there for a way that every Nix package consumer wants to go grab it yet. And we're still investing in that and working closer with NVIDIA on that. NVIDIA has goals of having that very available, I will say that. And it started out with a bunch of commercial relationship stuff where it was, contracts and paperwork and legals and all that. And now now they're like, okay, how do we get out to everybody? It's like, okay, now let's have that conversation.
Right. I think it's really important, like, to know where we are going, because we want to make, as we did with Nix, how to make it easy available is like, everything is a Flox install away, right? It should be that easy. You want something for your specific CUDA platform, hardware, it should be just a Flox install away. Like, it should be that easy. And it's easy to design something in eagerness, and it's like, oh, that should be the way, or it's actually better to kind of go a few times over the iteration. And I think we kind of go for the latter. We might be moving slowly because of this. It's already possible to do a bunch of this stuff, with Flox. But if you want to kind of have a general way of doing things, it takes time to kind of figure out the right UX for it. And I think we are striving for that perfection, because I think it pays off tremendously.
Yeah. Also, the talk I give tomorrow is going to cover that in a little more depth as well.
Yep.
So, yes.
Yep.
Two questions. First one, if I'm using, let's say, Python or Node, and I have a bunch of things in performance.txt or package.json, can I mix stuff coming from the Flox hub and that, or what's the story there?
Yes,
Repeat.
you absolutely can, and we actually expect most people to do that. And it's not, you don't necessarily get all the purity of doing everything with Nix all the way through, but most people don't. That's not the thing that's holding them up. And so, like, the way that I do a lot of my development is I will have a Flox environment that gets me up to the runtime. Basically, anything that's got a C extension, I want that from Nix. And then after that, can I just run NPM? Can I just run UV or whatever? Like, often that works. And then people say, well, when you want to build a package from that, how do you guarantee traceability and all that? And there's many different practices on how to do that. You can download everything and make it as a bundle, as an input, and basically trust on first use. You could run something like Dream to Nix or UV to Nix or NPM to Nix or whatever and get a Nix expression for every one of those libraries. Just depends on how much you care about that particular part of the problem. Obviously, the more and more you put into Nix, the more guarantees we can make or you can make about what the SBOM is and the depth of it and everything like that. But from a lot of practical application purposes, I'm like, once you get me the C extensions, I can just use NPM or I can just use other language package managers if that's required. That's what devs are going to do anyway. And that's why we were like, we have to support this as a workflow, because if we don't, this conversation's over. So.
Just kind of repeating the question. We forgot to repeat the question.
The question that was asked was basically, if I have a package.json or requirements.txt in a project already, like, what do I do from a Flox or Nix perspective with it? And I tried to answer that. Yeah. I hope that worked out okay. So.
There was a second one?
Yeah. The second question was, I was trying to get started with Flox on my machine, and so I looked at the console instructions. Unfortunately, I'm on Arch, which I know is going to get me in trouble in this room, and I have a friend
Nope.
so that has become something.
Welcome.
What should I do? Actually?
We'll soon have an Arch. Some colleague of mine already has a prototype.
I was going to say, we definitely have, those installers are kicking around. I know that, but they're probably not on the website. Yeah, you can install Nix and then do a Nix native install. That's probably the right path for
right now.
Today. But in a few weeks, hopefully that will actually just have you a package that you want to use. So,
question here?
I've been using Flox now for my company for the past 4 or 5 months, and I've been trying to slowly start making these little branches that I just call it snow. Every time I make a new branch, I just call it snow, and that's usually me trying to reproduce everything in Flox, like completely pure, as pure as you make, that kind of thing. it's been cool because it's been helping me work with the other developers to try to kind of figure out, okay, we still need these packages, like are we still using them? But one of the biggest things that I kind of ran into was trying to teach my other developers, my coworkers, what the naming, like the package naming is. And so that's like the Flox part of it is like, I mean, they get that immediately, but it's usually trying to explain, it's like, okay, why is this one this name? How can I find it? And I'm like, I just sit there, so.
Let's repeat.
Yeah, I'll repeat it. So basically, I think it was, I've been using Flox. I like the Flox part. We can't figure out the package names was more or less and I am 100% with you.
Yep.
The naming conventions inside of Nix packages are not consistent. And so like you can't even if you think you know, you're not necessarily correct.
It's okay to complain. Like, I'm not complaining.
Oh, I'm
It's just
complaining.
like it's more like a-
I think it's nuts.
Just to be clear, for anybody here who packages stuff. So,
I mean, I was a core maintainer on Fedora and on Debian at one point, so it's like, to me, like Nix makes no sense in the way they name things, because there's no, I don't know of guidelines. It seems like it's more like you just do the thing and then they merge it, which, I mean, there's a lot of cool democratization there, but also naming is hard. And I will say that one of the things I do a lot is I literally go into ChatGPT and I say, what's the package name that has this thing in it? And it'll tell me.
And that's okay.
that's what I've
We
been
all
doing.
do it.
And I thought that was like taboo and really bad and whatever.
No.
If that's the way to do it, that's the way.
I mean, I'm not saying it's the best way. I'm saying it's the way I know that works. So
I'll put it, there's also the other thing is there are some improvements happening to the catalog that will actually make that easier. Not the names, but you will be, if you're looking for a binary, you should be able to find it. You're looking for a library, you should be able to find it. You should be able to search in for the content of it.
yeah, you'll be able to search by output
I
shortly.
would say with like
Yeah.
some kind of elastic
Yeah.
search algorithm.
Exactly.
You'll be able to search by output because we actually will separate outputs, and that's not out yet, right? It's like, I don't know.
Should be,
It's
is
either-
or it's not, I don't know.
It could have launched like yesterday. I don't know. Like we do releases every 2 weeks, and I know it's in like the next one that's going out. So, yeah. So, anything else we can answer? If not, I do encourage you to, the beginning of the workshop that Rok did the speed run through was basically going to Flox Hub, signing up, and going through that workflow. That workflow is pretty much going to get you started and get you onboarded, I hope. And if it doesn't, come yell at me because I want it fixed so that it does. So that's the goal there. Well, thank you very much. Hope you enjoy PlanetNix. Cheers.
Thank you.